So I do not like machine learning, and what I mean by that is I have no interest whatsoever in coding machine learning models. Now, when I tell someone that, and probably when you're listening to this right now, you're probably thinking I'm absolutely crazy. Why would I not want to do machine learning? It is so cool, it's so hypey, there's so many different applications for it. Why wouldn't I want to do that? So I'll try to explain why I don't, and it really came from two experiences that I had with machine learning. Because initially I was the same way. Why would no one want to learn machine learning? I thought it was very cool, and so I learned it. So experience number one that I had with machine learning was I was trying to figure out what the heck that I wanted to do in software engineering, or pick like a topic of focus that I wanted to spend more time on. And so one of the things I started with was machine learning. I had some experience with Python, so I decided to do machine learning in Python. They have very nice libraries. I used something called like scikit-learn, I believe, and the place that I did a lot of work with that was on Kaggle. Super nice website. I definitely recommend it if you want to learn ML or Python or just any of that stuff. Basically, they just have competitions that you can do where you have a data set they give you, and they have some kind of question. And you're supposed to like compute a percentage or something, and then it's a competition who does it the best, and they have prizes and whatnot that companies sponsor. So it's a fun way to learn. They have all kinds of tutorials. The community is really nice too. They have like all these resources of, hey, here's how I would actually go about my experimentation to come to this conclusion, and it's a great way to learn ML. So I did that. I went through and did it with scikit-learn a lot. I did neural networks. I did all that fun stuff where you set up a model, you take in the data. So what I did when I do that is first I'd read like the problem statement, I'd download the data for the competition. And then usually the first step you do is kind of you explore the data with it. So I'd pull that data into Jupyter notebooks. Those are like the standard data science way of looking at data. Or not looking at data, but it's a fun way to like go through and experiment with data and visualize it. It's like basically a Python interpreter that you can just run and see the past results. You can view charts and stuff. So you do that with the data, you get a good feel for it. And then once you have like a gist of what the data looks like, what kind of data you're working with, you'll like try to decide what kind of model, because there's a lot of different machine learning models, would be good to predict what you want to predict. So you may start with an initial model you think that would do well, and then you would train your data on that model. And so what that means, or you train your model on that data, and what that means is basically your model would take all that data, and then it would sift and compute some computed values, which they call training. And it would sit through all that stuff. It may take an hour, it may take a couple of days. It depends how much data you have, it depends how much computing resources you have. And then after you've trained a model, you have a model where you can give it some values and it's able to predict something. And so depending on how well it predicts, that's how well you do in the competition. So that's kind of the gist of what I was doing on Kaggle. And so basically, if your ML model didn't do well, what you would do is there's some parameters that you can tune, you can change how you're doing, what model you're using, and you kind of go through the process on an iterative loop where you'd go back through the data, you'd maybe clean it up some more, analyze it some more, come up with a new way, compute some different field values that you can then retrain your model with, and then you can see if it does better, tune some more parameters. And it's just like a loop where you're just constantly tuning stuff until you feel like you're getting better results. And then there's all kinds of stuff that you have to be careful about, that you're not tuning your model too much to a specific data set, and then you can get stuff messed up. So there's all these things that you're kind of juggling, but the gist of it is you're playing with data, tuning parameters, trying to get it to work. And so that process of doing that was not very interesting to me. When my model wasn't working or whatever, I'd go back and I'd tune those things and I'd work on those things. That process of just doing that over and over again was not that fun for me. It was interesting at the end to get a model that would then predict something based on some values. That was very interesting, but the process of actually creating the model was not very interesting. And I had a similar experience when I then did an internship at Bank of America, where I was using Java instead of Python, but I was developing a machine learning model for semantic analysis. Not semantic, I forget actually what it was called. Basically what it was, there's a nice name for it, but given a sentence, tell me how positive the sentence is or how negative the sentence is. So if someone is swearing in a sentence, or if someone says a very positive word, you would denote whether or not the word was positive or negative. And so I was working on a machine learning model to do that. I was using the Stanford NLP library with Java to do that. And it's a nice library, but it's a similar process where we have some data. In that case, I was creating some test data myself. You may be working with a data set that's already there though, but I was making some test data of just words people might, or sentences, not just words, it would be sentences that you're dealing with, and the sentiment analysis, that's what it's called. So sentiment analysis is what I was doing. And so I would take sentences and determine the sentiment of the sentence, positive, negative, neutral, that jazz. So I would make up my own sentences, fill them into the model. I would use that to train the model, and then I would basically tune some parameters, test it to see how it did. And I just constantly did that over and over again. And so that process was not that fun for me, creating the data. And maybe I also would not only just come up with the data myself, but I would generate the data programmatically. I'd look at pull some data sets online about sentiment analysis to include in it as well. But that process, that was really the main problem for me, was I didn't enjoy the process of creating a good machine learning model. Now maybe there's ways to do it other than how I've done it before in the past, but from what I've heard, it's generally, as a machine learning scientist or data scientist, that's kind of the things you're going to be working with, is analyzing data, cleaning the data into a nice form, tuning parameters and getting the parameters to a nice shape that fits well with your data, and then waiting for your data to train. That was another thing that I was not really liked, is it would take forever to train the data sometimes for the model. So it was really boring to the feedback loop was really slow. If I wanted to test something out, it would take a couple hours or something to see how well the model would do after that. And maybe I was just bad at it, and there's better techniques to do it where the feedback loop is not as long and you can iterate faster. But that was kind of the two experiences I had with machine learning. And so I was I much prefer programming and architecting web applications and building an actual thing, a product or a website, an app, an actual interface that someone is using. Well, not necessarily an interface, but I like building those sort of things where I'm actually able to program and architect solutions for better, compared to the data science / machine learning stuff where I'm doing kind of the process that I earlier described. So that's really why I'm not really that interested in machine learning, and I don't really want to create any machine learning models. But with that said, I'm happy to interact with machine learning models and include them in applications that I'm building. And I think that's very interesting, and that makes a lot of sense. Pulling in an image recognition library or something to use in a project, totally cool with doing. I just don't want to be the one actually creating that model. Anyway, I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are. In the comments, let me know what you think about machine learning. Are you a fan? If so, what's your favorite machine learning model? Let me know. I'm gonna have to tell you, mine's going to be linear regression. JK, that's too basic. All right, just cut it off.